Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. And we have another rare find in our community here with us tonight, Deborah, Clair, founder of DJC Connect, LLC. In so many words, she's a grant writer, and especially for nonprofits. And so this is going to be a very special conversation. And I want to thank you so much. I know you're busy with your businesses and you're in school and all of that, but you're taking time out as part of the work that you do to be with our podcast. So I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight. I'm sorry, I was caught off guard by that. But I'm excited to be here. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So, friends, as you know, we're a nonprofit organization, and we're working hard to enhance the awareness and support of Black businesses in our community. And Deborah and I was just having a real interesting conversation about how important it is to support our businesses in our community so that those dollars can circulate, because we got too many people in our community with businesses, and those dollars that we're spending in these establishments are going out. And when you don't continue to invest, and you can't sustain and maintain what you have. And we feel that this is part of the reason that our communities are looking like they are, why they are in the condition that they're in, is because we have too many people whose only interest in our community is making a dollar, making a profit, and taking it somewhere else. So that's why we are bringing you these businesses in our community every week, letting you see who these people are. We have so many wonderful Black-owned businesses here in the Chicago area, and we need to be supporting them. We ask you to go to our website at rrgbc.org, where we have two links. One is to the International Black Pages. Brother Eugene Eldonado, who's had his Black Pages book out here for a number of years, has a website. So if you're looking for a Black business and you're looking for a Black accountant, you're looking for a Black dentist, or looking for any type of business, he has that on his website. So you can go to our website at rrgbc.org and click on the Black Pages International. And then last week we had Brother Tori Muhammad on from Chicago Eats. And we found out we have over 400 Black-owned restaurants in the area. So we don't have an excuse,
None at all.
Go to rrgbc.org and click on Chicago Eats and look at all of these Black restaurants that we have. We have to make a concerted effort. Just like this lady told me on the north side when I was looking for some coffee, I asked for Starbucks. And she told me, I support the locals. And she started to tell me about this little coffee shop around the corner and how nice it was, because these people have community benefits agreements with these businesses in their community. So it's a two-way street, and we have to begin to look at it like that. And it might be a little inconvenient at times. We may have to stretch it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it helps when we support our businesses. It helps to sustain this very community that you live in. So this is why we do this podcast every week. And we're great supporters, as you know, of our bookstores. We have a list of our bookstores on our website at rrgbc.org. I think there are about 9 or 10 Black bookstores. So there is a resurgence. People say we're not reading, but we are reading. Some of these bookstores have book clubs and type different events, authors coming in to talk about their books at their bookstores. So go to rrgbc.org and check out the Black bookstores that we have in Chicago. I know it's easy to order on Amazon, you know, but Amazon gets a lot of the profit. Again, ask some of these authors who have their books on Amazon. They're hoping to benefit in numbers, but again, think about it. Think about your community, okay, and buy from our bookstores. We go a step further. We feature a Black bookstore on our website every month. And this month, it is still the Underground Bookstore located at 1727 East 87th Street. And they are, if not the oldest, one of the oldest Black bookstores that we have here in Chicago. Brother Yoel is the proprietor. And I promise you, there are books at Underground that you will not find anywhere. And if there's a book that you're looking for that you haven't seen somewhere, Brother Yoel can find it for you at 1727 East 87th. He also has a website, undergroundbookstore.com. The next step we take is we have a monthly book giveaway to a lucky subscriber. So we ask the bookstore of the month to choose a book. And the book that Brother Joel selected for this month is Chains of Ideas, The Origins of Our Authoritarian Age by Ibram X. Kendi. And this book argues that authoritarianism grows from a chain of ideas that build over time, and these ideas justify inequality, and then they take political shape. Does that sound familiar? We have a lot of inequalities going on here, and our public policies that our politicians put into place and vote on have a lot of impact on our daily lives. And so this is an interesting read. If you would like to win a copy of this book, all you have to do is subscribe to rrgbc.org, and you can possibly win a copy of this book. We pay for the book. We ask that you go into the bookstore and get the book so you can see what Brother Yoel has at the Underground Bookstore. But if that is not possible, we pay to have the book shipped to you. All we ask is that you read it and share the information and apply the information that you learn. We give away some good books. Go to rrgbc.org and look at the types of books that we have given away. And that's why we do this, because we feel knowledge is power. And then we ask that you go to Save Black Bookstores, Chicago at change.org and sign our petition. We want to get some dollars on the table for our bookstores. And then there's the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. Now, they're located at 5401 South Wentworth. Brother Greg Brown is the president of the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. They've been there for over 20 years, helping out people in the community. He has financial literacy classes. This is not a financial institution that is just trying to make money. They care about the people in our community. They have personal loans, business loans, loans in lieu of those astronomical payday loans that have ruined many people's finances. They have savings accounts, checking accounts, and accounts for children as young as 7 years old. And as I mentioned, they have financial literacy classes there. So we ask that you support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. And then finally, please support Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. We pay to have these podcasts and run this website and other work that we do to try to help keep our businesses afloat. and we appreciate any donations that you are able to make. And again, you can go to rrgbc.org and make those donations. So, and then also, we just want to also reiterate, please support our Black businesses. That's what we're all about. So let's get to our guest tonight, Deborah Clair. As I mentioned, she is the founder of DJC Connect LLC. She has 22 plus years in the nonprofit sector. She has experience across multi-million-dollar institutions and small grassroots organizations, and she has a deep understanding of funding disparities and structural inequities. She's also the founder and executive director of Camp 1302 for 14 years, which she will tell us about that as well. She has an academic journey that we would like to talk to her about. She's a member of our community. She's a community builder. She has leadership rooted in service, equity, long-term impact. She's a wife, a mother, a grandmother, doing a lot of juggling, like a lot of our Black women out here are having to do.
So much.
Okay,
So
so
much.
we're going to take a deep dive into what it takes for grassroots organizations to thrive. So, Deborah, I want to thank
Yeah.
you for coming. You know, and this
Thank
is
you for
really what
having
we
me.
talk about. Yes, ma'am. So, I would like to start out with you telling our audience what inspired you to create DJC Connect LLC back in 2022, and what gap did you see in the nonprofit sector that pushed you to make this move?
Yeah, yes. Well, thanks for having me, Denise. This is amazing. Like all the work you're doing. I'm so happy that you all reached out because I had no idea. You know, people were back here doing some hard work, and that's probably one of the reasons why I started DJC Connect. I have been in nonprofit for over 20 years, and I worked at some of Chicago's larger institutions. And I worked there like, what are we doing for the small institutions? And then when I started Camp 1302 out of my church, I was like, we're out here bootstrapping it on ground, you know, boots on ground,
Mhm.
making things happen with little money. I think I ran camp for the first year with $1,000, and most of that came out of my pocket because, you know, we're a small Black church. We don't have a lot of money, so I was like, I'm just gonna do camp and see what comes out of it. I reached out to a lot of different partners and organizations to see how they could help supply food and snacks and stuff like that, and went from there. And then, you know, years after, I was like, I'm sure I am not the only one out here. And I had some major fundraising experience, and I had a lot of people saying, oh, you know about grants? I'm gonna call you, I'm gonna talk to you about it. And it's
Mhm.
always us, right? It's always
Mhm.
our
Mhm.
smaller nonprofits, or us that's boots on ground doing stuff out of our own pockets, trying to make it work. And so DJC Connect was born out of that, you know, knowing that there are people out here who need support, from the very large organizations sometimes to the smaller, like I said, grassroots nonprofits. And then Camp 1302 was born 14 years ago, like I said, in my church. And my pastor came to me like, I want to make a school. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing a school, but we can do it something they can. Okay. So I built the you know, having the building was the biggest thing, and I hear that a lot from a lot of nonprofits about having that space is gold. And so I've been blessed to be able to have the church as a home base for the last 14 years. Um, and so I write grants for that. You know, provided that's not a conflict with my current job, because I am currently in a role in a large nonprofit where I am a fundraiser, and a conflict of interest can occur. So I make
Okay.
sure that I cannot write as many grants as I would like, because it oftentimes is a conflict in the current work that I'm doing. So
Okay.
sometimes my hands are tied when it comes to fundraising for my own entity, and I
Sure.
have to operate pretty much under the radar and at a low budget. just so that I'm not having a conflict at work. But yeah, DJC Connect was born out of the need to simply
Need.
help other nonprofits who were boots on ground, grassroots, trying to start doing real work and trying to get out here. And that's basically why I started DJC Connect.
So, what would you say are some of the biggest barriers that these groups face when they're trying to access resources?
That's a good. They're not ready. They're not ready.
What does that
Um,
what does that look like?
yeah. So one question that I've asked most people who work with me is, "Are you grant ready?" And "Are you grant ready" means, do you have a mission? Do you have a vision? Do you have a budget? That's the biggest thing. Like we out here is just spending money, and a lot of times we don't know how much our organization costs to run. And so just want somebody to give you money based on the work you've been doing, but you need to know how you are spending in your organizations. What are your expenses? Do you have programming? Is your programming laid out to a point where the organization who you're asking for money is willing to say, you have a good program, let me fund you? Do you have a board? Do you have a board that's not your cousins, that's not your sisters, your uncles, your brothers, but a board that's actually working for you, making connections for you, that's touching places that you can't necessarily touch? Those are some of the barriers. So being grant ready is the huge barrier for our smaller grassroots nonprofits who are out here. I mean, it's for profits too, that have been doing the work.
Mhm.
But they need to know that they have to be grant ready.
Okay. Why do you think these grassroots organizations, especially Black led and even other marginalized groups, are often overlooked in these traditional funding spaces?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I do know, and research has shown that prior to the social unrest, right, in 2020, when all of, I think that was when George Floyd died. That was when they started all the rioting. Right after the pandemic, what we found out is less than 2% of Black-led organizations were getting any resources that they needed to run. And if you were led by a Black person, you were much more marginalized than others. Now, why that was, I don't know, and I cannot remember the stat right now of why it was. But what I can tell you is that we know that from research, 2% of Black-led organizations were getting funding until the social unrest happened. And once that started happening, that's when you saw more companies hire leaders of color, or more organizations, should say. You saw more foundations bring in more Black people on their boards. You saw more nonprofits, larger nonprofits hire leaders of color and hire more staff of color. You saw a lot of that happen due to the unrest. And that was because what happened was people like organizations like Black Lives Matter really spoke up and step up and talk about the unjust and the funding resources that was happening to women-led organizations and people of color-led organizations. And so we all felt it at that time. Like if we were working in a nonprofit and we were a person of color, we saw the shift and felt the shift. And so I just know that during that time, corporations start giving more. Foundations, when I say foundations, I mean private foundations, start giving more and started pouring more resources into communities and more resources into organizations to kind of build them up. So that is some of the things that I was seeing, or that we saw in the nonprofit area. Now there's probably more to it as time has changed, but right now the shift has started in 2020 when we started seeing that social unrest.
One of the issues we have in our community is we get dollars, we get resources from different places. Even looking at the fact of how much you might get or how much you may not get,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like the our community is not whatever resources, wherever they go, our community is not empowered. So we have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of nonprofit organizations out here. Um, and I don't know to what extent they're actually able to do the things that are necessary to empower our communities, which is why we support the for-profit businesses that
Mm-hmm.
are out here. And so we're also, I know you're on the nonprofit side, you know,
Mm-hmm.
then there's the for-profit side, you know,
Yes.
and there needs to be a balance here because it seems like a lot of resources go towards the nonprofit organizations, while our for-profit organizations, I don't know that they get the loans that they
Mm-hmm.
need for
Mm-hmm.
startups, that they get those bridge
Mm-hmm.
loans they need to help
Yeah.
them during the hard times,
Mm-hmm.
the monies or loans or grants they need to expand,
Mm-hmm.
to build community.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know? So this is just a, I don't
Yeah.
know. It seems like the mix is not there to
Yeah. Well,
empower our community.
yeah. Well, I can tell you this. When nonprofits started, the history of nonprofits started from what large corporate couldn't do and what government couldn't do. So
Mhm,
nonprofit came in to fill that gap right there, right? So as time went on, we started seeing more small businesses, and we know that the entrepreneurs are basically the backbone of the country, right? So when
mhm,
those businesses started coming in, and once again, you started seeing an influx of, think about when the pandemic happened, you start seeing an influx of funds that started coming into our communities because we did not have those funds before, and because we were really making a fuss about not having those funds. And so you saw the nonprofit community kind of like build up in a way, because for a long time nonprofit community wasn't getting the resources that they need, especially at the smaller level. When I told you that it
mhm,
was 2% of black led or people of color led organizations that was getting those fundings, it was 2%. It was terrible. And now when you see businesses, it's so many more businesses now. I can't speak as eloquently to what's happening in the for-profit world as I can to the nonprofit world, but I
mhm,
can tell you that there were resources available for to like kind of bring out businesses that were kind of going under in the 2020 or in the pandemic. Now what we all see is like the pullback of those
mhm,
funds, right? We
mhm,
see a lot of those funds being pulled back because what's happened is your economy is changing. As we know, you got a nice president in the house, in the system now. So you see a lot of those funds being pulled back. And so I don't think that you see your for-profit businesses kind of declining, but that's because a lot of it is based on what's happening with tariffs, what's happening with taxes and corporate taxes, and all of that stuff is happening. And the nonprofit is filling that pool just as much as corporate, because the businesses that was pouring into those nonprofits can't pour into them like they used to, right? Their money is either staying flat or being pulled away altogether. And I have seen that. When I make my ask for $1 million or 1.5 million, and my donor tell me, well, we can't do 1.5, but we can do 1 million. I'm like, okay. Then I see that something is happening with the business side of the world. So what that makes me do is go do a little bit of research, like what's happening, what are the trends that are taking place in the business world. And from what I understand, it is the tariffs, it is the taxes that they are being charged, it is inflation that's causing the businesses to kind of pull back from giving to nonprofits. And that's who basically support nonprofits. Actually, let me not say that, because that is incorrect. It is the individuals that support nonprofits, much more than a corporation. You see 9% of corporations that give to nonprofit, 13% of private foundations that give to nonprofit. Out of the 100 in the pie, 50% of those funds come from individuals.
mhm.
And so, but a lot in those businesses, it is not that there is an imbalance of funds. Like, we don't go for the same kind of grants, right? Like, grants for profit is very different than grants for nonprofit, and
Sure.
there's no competition between the two.
Hmm. Okay. I want to go back to what you said earlier when you mentioned that these organizations are often not ready.
Mhm.
And you said, in terms of their mission, their vision, their budget, um, their programming. When you say you want to start a nonprofit organization,
Mhm.
what are who should you go to? What are some steps you should take
Yeah.
so that you have these areas covered?
Yeah, I often tell people, you've already been doing the work if you're a nonprofit. If you are grassroots and you've been doing it and you automatically decide I want to become a 501c3, which is a charity. The 501c3 means that you are becoming a charity donation where people can give you donations. So it is
Hmm.
really so you can say you have a donation that's tax deductible, which means that if you've been getting all this income, you can use that to say, no, I really don't have this much income. My income has decreased because I've been given this money. So your 501c3 is just that. It's just making sure that folks who give to your organization can write it off.
Sure.
But the things that you do, so if you've been already doing the work, that's number one. You've already been doing the work. And so you want to make it official so that you can get people to start pouring, people, organizations, corporations, foundations to start pouring back into your organization. Now, where do you go? A lot of times is Google. Right now, it's a lot of AI. People are using, Chat GPT for everything. And so
Yeah.
you can certainly get that information from Chat GPT. Check it. Make sure you are checking that information because a lot of times it could be wrong. Remember,
Sure. Sure.
we are providing the knowledge to the AI. Okay. We are the intelligence that's providing it to the artificial. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that when you go where you go to get those resources, you first start with the state of Illinois, right? People are going there to get their LLCs or their 501c3s. You start there to get your 501c3. But to get the information about how do I do my budget, you can always go to a nonprofit website and or a webinar on, or you can always come to DJC Connect, right? I can help you through that. I can consult, give you some consulting. I always talk to folks for like 30 minutes anyway, and I'm not going to sell what I do, but definitely if you need some help, Google is a amazing resource. YouTube University, amazing resources. There's so many people out there that are telling you how to go about becoming grant ready, but I would say the first thing you do is get your budget together. Get
Hmm.
your budget together so you'll know how much you're actually spending on this organization.
Okay. So you have to start keeping track
Yes.
of
Keep track of your
all the
expenses.
dollars that you are spending and what
Yes.
dollars you think you're going to
Yeah.
need.
And
Should,
I went
should you get with an accountant?
you can. Like if you're not good with numbers, you can get with an accountant. But I'm gonna tell you what I did. I went to Excel, and Excel had an amazing template that did all the formulas for me. And I used that for the first maybe 10 years before I can afford QuickBooks. So I would say use Excel as a resource and find a template. They have great nonprofit budget templates. Excel is a perfect place for you to start. And if you don't have Excel, you can always do or Word document or your notepad. Just start jotting down how much you're spending. Oh, I bought snacks for these kids at the park. I went to the store and I bought a notepad for the kids at the park. You know what I'm saying? Like start
You got
just
to keep
jotting down.
receipts.
Yeah, and keep your receipts because
Hmm.
those are necessary. If you do become a 501c3, the other thing people really don't know is that because you've been doing the work before you became an actual 501c3, you can use all that time and say, I've been doing this work for 20 years. And in 2026, I decided to become a 501c3. Can you give me that money? And that justifies why you are asking a grantor for money as well. But the place people usually start is Google. People usually
Okay.
start at Google to get that information, to where you can get that information because it's not easily out there unless you ask somebody who has a nonprofit already.
Hmm.
That information can come from anywhere.
Okay. Well, you're right about the Google and the AI and Chat GPT. I
And
think
the
there's
YouTube
another one
University,
called Claude. Have you heard of
Claude,
Claude? Yeah.
mm-hmm,
Uh,
Copilot. So it's
Mhm.
Copilot, it's Gemini, it's Chat GPT, it's Claude. Some of them are more ethical than others, but Claude is one of the more ethical ones. Copilot is based off of the same system that ChatGPT is based off of. So a lot of people have gotten away from ChatGPT, but you do have some that are more ethical than others, that will ask you different kinds of questions that will, help you to kind of lay out your information a little bit better.
And I
But I
think,
would definitely suggest having a professional look over your stuff. Um,
mhm.
and just
So when you
get
say a
some help.
professional, what type of professional should you go
I'll
to?
call DJC Connect.
There you
Call me. I help you.
go.
I
Yeah,
help you
really.
out. But
Sure.
you can come up with the thoughts and everything and put it out and have them write it out and then let somebody look over it to make sure, because
Sure.
that too sometimes is a trigger for your donor. Like, they really didn't put any love or thought into this thing. Are they really doing what they said they were doing? Oh my goodness, this sounds unreal. So you want it to sound like you're doing something.
And some of the computers are coming with what is that, Copilot
They do.
already in the system
They
of
do.
your
But if
computer.
you think about it, when you correct the, what is it called, Grammarly, or your spell check, that was AI.
Hmm.
That was AI. It already comes with AI.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't like them. They seemed a little aggressive. They would jump in at times when I didn't need them, and
Well,
then
you
I
didn't
couldn't,
even
get them
can
off
you
the
read out.
page. Yeah, Grammarly was a little too
That was AI.
aggressive.
That was the beginning of it, Denise. That was the beginning of it taking over.
Um, Fundraising. What are some
Hmm.
early steps that small nonprofits can take to strengthen their fundraising?
Oh, that's a good question. I say if you are early or a smaller nonprofit, a lot of people immediately go to events, right? So I'm going to throw a gala and sell tickets for people to come. I, that wouldn't be a first step. I would say ask your friends and your family to support you first. Because if you look at the giving pie chart, individuals are the number one place that gives money. So start there. Start with your board. Your board is your front line. If you have a board and all they can do is go ask their friends for $5 or $6, $10 or whatever, start there first. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you feel like you got enough disposable income for that organization or for that small entity, then you can do an event, right? I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't Most people jump to events first. Events take a lot of resources.
Yeah.
They take a lot of resources. If you don't have the money to pay a DJ, or the money to book that location, if you don't, and you waiting on ticket sales to come in, then you got to print the tickets. You got to print the raffle tickets. You got to put up the curtains. You got to drape it. You got to make decorations. You got to do all this, and then you got to get people to cook. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about all of the resources that you as a small organization got to put in, unless you were blessed enough to have a free space. So I think
Mm-hmm.
another thing people can do is, if you are going to do an event, there are some places that will, it says my connection is lost, so I hope it's not. um
Okay, you okay?
but there are some places that offer, like on Mondays they close their business. Like, we used to do stuff at a brewery, Lagunitas, when it was open. They would close their place on a Monday for nonprofits to have their events there, and they will sell their beer, and they will be able to provide profit to the nonprofit, right, in that way. So if you
Mm-hmm.
are able to find a place that you can partner with, that's willing to maybe even barter with you in exchange for the work you do and the space they have, then I would say that's when you do an event, because sometimes the location takes up a large piece of your budget. So those are some of the things I would say start with as a grassroots nonprofit. Ask your friends and family to be your first line of defense in terms of donors. Ask your board to be your first line of defense as of donors, because sometimes your grants ask if your board is giving you money.
Mhm.
And then if you want to do an event, start with some place that has a free space for you, so that you can use the money that you would have paid for a space towards your actual organization.
Mhm. Okay. Want to talk a little bit about leadership and strategy.
Okay.
Okay, now you're completing a doctorate,
My
right?
God. Yes.
In interdisciplinary leadership with a focus on nonprofit and social entrepreneurship.
Yes.
How has this journey shaped the way you're supporting organizations today? And this speaks to the importance of education.
Yeah, yeah. So, because I've always been a nonprofit, I have, even before I started this journey, I have always understood that, even if it's $10, even if it's $5, um, one thing about being a fundraiser, I understand relationships, right? And so, like you were saying early on in the podcast, that if you support, that helps somebody,
Hmm.
right? And I think that just learning more about how the psychology of how organizations run, the systems that it takes to run, all the work that goes into those nonprofits, even as a social entrepreneur, right? So that means that you have a nonprofit, but what are you going to do that brings in revenue, right? So your nonprofit can create shirts, and that can be your social entrepreneurship, right? Like, you are doing something that supports the mission of your nonprofit. And so I understood that my dollar can help that organization to run, to keep going just a little bit further. And I think having just the extra education in it kind of just gave me, just more like reason to support these grassroots organizations through DJC Connect, knowing what they need to run and move forward. Now, what happens with nonprofits a lot of time, and I don't think people understand this, is that you may come to a consultant or to somebody who can help you. That doesn't mean that you are going to guarantee you're guaranteed to get whatever finances or funding that I may write a grant for, that I may connect you with. It is all about you building relationship with that funder. It is all about you building relationship with the organization. It is all about building relationship, and I think that that's what's so important in
Hmm.
all of the education that I have had, from my
Sure.
work experience to school. It is about building those relationships that helps to move those nonprofits or even a corporation further, right? You build a relationship with your insurance agent. You build a relationship with your whoever you buy your furniture from, right? Because you like that place, you're gonna go back over and over again, right? It is almost, I tell people, fundraising is like dating. It is, right?
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
starting a relationship with somebody or
Sure.
something or
Sure.
someplace. Even
Sure.
if you go to that bookstore, right? If you go to Underground Bookstore and you go in there and you like it, like, I like this place. I'm coming back because it's done something
Good.
to your heart.
And you create a greater appreciation
Correct.
for the fact
Absolutely.
that is
Absolutely.
there, and you
Yeah.
understand, and you and your journey with your education can understand all of the work
All
that
of
is
the work that goes
behind.
into it.
Like, you can walk into a business and it's everything is just together, you know
Yeah.
but you gotta know certain things to have an appreciation for what all you're
Yes.
seeing there,
Yeah.
as
And the
opposed to
things that
going in and
people go
seeing
through.
all of the disarray.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna have it together.
My leadership coach at my camp, she says it all the time. She said only these kids understood what it is we go through to do the things that we do for them. Right? I'm like, yeah, but it's okay, they'll be all right. They'll understand it when they get older. But it's true, we go through a lot, as nonprofits, as small businesses, to be able to sip and savor. well-known
Sure.
Black-owned business, just put a post out saying how much work went into building his organization, how much work went into building his company. And I don't know him personally, but I heard his story and I was like, my God, nobody knew, how much you go through, the break-ins, people tearing your stuff up and you having to take steps back to take some steps forward. I mean,
Mhm.
it takes a lot to build these organizations and these companies. And so I have definitely garnered a lot more respect and understanding of the passion, the breadth and depth of the work that goes into it. Me myself, I'm up 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, then have to get up and go to my regular 9 to 5. Right?
Mhm.
It's just a lot of work and toil that goes into it.
Sure. Many founders, struggle with burnout.
Man.
And so, what leadership practices could help nonprofit leaders stay grounded, stay effective?
I am learning that, Denise, for real. I am really learning that myself. But one thing I have, really found myself reverting back to over and over again, and that is my God. That is for real a higher power, right? Because I know for real I can't do this in myself, and always having a circle that is there to support me. I think those are some of the things. I have a friend who is like, come on girl, let's go outside, and I'm like, no, I got this to do, I got that to do. She said, you need to go outside. I'm always like, no, I do not want to go outside, I got so much to do. But I think that those are some of the things that, as a nonprofit founder, as a founder of anything, hold on to your higher power. Mine is just happens to be God, right? The Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and my family, making sure I have a strong support system. I have also, people say I'm too blessed to be stressed. I've determined that I'm blessed out, not stressed out. Okay. I'm not gonna
Okay.
let these places things kill me. I'm not gonna, overdo it. Sometimes I get into those things where I ruminate over things over and over again, and I have to take a step back. Like, Deborah, no, you said you are blessed out. Have faith and believe that things are going to work out. And it is like that every year with camp. I tell people every year I wake up in January and I pray. I say, Lord, is this year going to be the end of Camp 1302? And then somebody calls me and say, I want to make a donation, or I have a kid that needs someplace to go for the summer. I say, okay,
Okay.
God, I guess we back in it. And so I keep going from there. And that's where I stay grounded in. I stay grounded in my purpose. I stay grounded in, God. I stay grounded with my family. Those are some of the things that keeps me from burnout. Those are some of the things that keep me going
So
and
tell us
grounded.
more about your Camp 32,
Camp
1302.
1302.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Camp 1302 was founded 14 years ago. Like I said, we are located at 1302 West 74th Street, which is Rose of Light Missionary Baptist Church. So we are located at 1302. So that's what this namesake is, the address. We are a summer day camp. We are registering right now. You can find out more information at www.camp1302.org. And it's free tuition. What I've learned is, and it's crazy that it took me 14 years to learn, is that we offer $1,200 value for no cost. We ask parents to support camp with a $25 donation, and that pays for your field trip. And so you need to make that donation, and your child needs to enroll in the first week before that $25 is then applied to your field trip, your first field trip.
Okay.
And so Camp 1302 has also evolved. Over 2 years ago, we started an after school program, which is called Lead Like Fire. FIRE is the acronym for Fearless Innovators Ready to Evolve. And that means that we are raising leaders who will be fearless in the work that they do and being their authentic selves. They're being innovative, and meaning that they are creative. If things need to pivot, they are not shaken by the pivot. They are learning how to create and move as we go. And they are social change makers. That's what that ready to evolve means. It means that they are out here making moves, not only at camp, but in their own communities. And that program then pipelines into them working at summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been blessed.
Well, I think that's important, in understanding that what we do is important to the community at large. You know,
Mhm.
what we're putting back. You know, if you think
Yeah.
about to the earlier times, you know, you look at the old Western movies,
Yeah.
and people just moving into a community, and there's a
Yeah.
store, you know, in town, and but everything is relative. Everybody is connected, you know, and everybody is
Mhm.
needing one
Yeah.
another. And I
Yeah.
think whatever we do, camps and
And
organizations,
yeah.
that needs to be our central focus, is how do we sustain our communities? You
Yeah.
know,
For
and
sure.
whatever it is that we're learning, whatever it is that we're doing,
Pour back
it
into that
is to
community.
create generational wealth and to
Yes.
sustain and
Yes.
continue to develop this
Yeah.
community.
I am so glad you told me about, you said something about the Southside Community Federal Credit Union.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
definitely reaching out to Mr. Greg Brown, because,
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, like, how can I bring in some financial literacy to our teams who are
Mm-hmm.
working, because I want them to be stable enough where even if you making $100, every 3 weeks or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you know what that $100 can do for you and for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
And
for
their
that.
parents can set up accounts for them at the Southside
Absolutely.
Community Federal Credit Union, because they have accounts for children as young as 7 years
Yes.
old.
Yes.
And
And
they
camp
begin
is
to
from 5
understand,
to
like you talk about, relationship, you know,
yes.
what the bank can
Yeah.
do for me and what I can do for the bank. Because in order for the bank to thrive, they need us to open up an account.
Yes. Yes.
Many
And
of us
I
are
forget
also,
about that credit union over there on 55th. I
that's
forget about
right.
it.
That's right. And we have our accounts in these banks, and these banks are making money off of us,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, every day. That's how they make their money, off our dollars sitting in their accounts. They
Mm-hmm.
loan our money, they invest our money. You know,
Exactly.
that's your money
Exactly.
sitting in that bank. So you
Yeah.
need
It's your
somebody
money
that
making
can
them
give
more
that.
money.
That's right. That's right. What do you think are some of the most common operational mistakes that small nonprofits make?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think that, and I can think back to some of the things that I did. I think one, not having a budget. Really.
Okay, so that's going back to that. Mhm.
Yeah, that is really, I think, something operational that we need, because how can you ask for money if you don't know how much money it takes to run your organization, right?
Mhm.
And then a lot of times we end up, if we get the grant, we don't know how to manage the grant
Mhm.
because we have not learn how to manage our own budget, right? And a
Mhm.
lot of times when you ask for grant funding, they ask you about those things. What systems do you use? Are you able to use to manage your dollars? So I
Okay.
think that that's one big important one. I think the other one is not building relationships at the onset of your
Okay.
organization, or even asking for those dollars. So
Okay.
those are what I see in some of the nonprofits, because that's I get a lot of calls about that too. I remember early on somebody called me like, "Girl, I don't even know how much money we spending." You don't know? Well, how are you? Right? How do you know what you need if you don't know how much money you spending? Like, it is a catch 22 almost, right? Like, you just know you got to get this, you got to buy stuff, but how much money really is it taking you to run this organization? And it turns out with that particular person, we found out she was spending over $100,000 a year out of her own pocket to run her organization. And she was like, I didn't even know I had that much money. Exactly, because you're not stopping to take time to, read through. And I'm not a financial person at all, Denise.
But
I am not.
see, that comes down to basic finances there. You know what I'm saying? You know how we used to have a checkbook,
Yeah.
and with the checkbook, you had a ledger,
Yeah.
and every time you wrote a check, you
Mm-hmm.
could indicate how much you spent,
Yeah.
and then your balance was
Yeah.
always there. You could see your balance. People
Yeah.
don't do that anymore. They just spending money, and then if you're
Yeah.
asking for grant money, you're getting that money. If you're not as able to
You
manage the small
irresponsibly
budget, what are you
spending.
going to do with that?
And
So
then
I
how do you
could see
report
that
on
being
it?
a red flag. I could see that.
Yeah. And then how do you report on those dollars that you spend? Because
Hmm.
inevitably that funder is going to ask you, how did you, they, a lot of times now, because you got trust-based philanthropy, right? I'm going to give you what you need because I know you need the dollars and I know you're going to do what you said you're going to do. But
Hmm.
sometimes they come back and say, if you want to apply for another grant, tell us how you spent that money.
Sure.
And if you don't have your ledger or if you don't have it in place, now I'm telling you, I struggled with that the first few years of camp because I was like, how do I keep track of all these dollars coming in? And it was small dollars. Some people would send 10, some people would send 20, some people would send $100. How do I keep track of those dollars that's coming in? So definite red flag if you're not taking care of the dollars that you are asking for.
Okay. When we look at other ethnic communities,
Mm-hmm.
the Jewish community, the Asian community, the Latino community, the Arab community, they have strong internal giving traditions, practices,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. So, what models or practices from these other communities could be
Mm-hmm.
adapted to strengthen internal support for Black led nonprofits?
That's a good question. And we talked about that earlier. I think it is supporting one another. I think that is one, like, definitely support. What I found myself doing is I don't only, but for the most part, I try to support other Black organizations by if they are having an event and I can't make it, I'll buy a ticket. Or if they are providing a service and I know that somebody needed, I refer somebody. If I hear of a grant that somebody may need, I refer somebody. I refer to for them to that grant. If
Mhm.
I got a call from somebody who said, "Hey, sister, you need some snacks for your camp." I said, "Sure do." She said, "I got you." So it is
Mhm.
about making sure that any relationship that you have, that you've built, that you are sharing that amongst the people and that people are aware of other things that's happening. You're not a crab in a barrel where I'm not gonna show you because I want to get it all.
Mhm.
It's enough
Mhm.
resources out here for everybody. So I
Mhm.
think that what we can do is share our knowledge and Denise, we don't give each other credit enough. You know, if I am doing a service or providing a work for you, credit my business. Credit me. Now, I am somebody personally who likes to do stuff and be anonymous. Personally. However, if my business or my company is doing something for you, go ahead and credit the business. Give the
Mhm.
business the credit that's doing it because that in turn then helps them to generate more business, more more customers, more clients. So that's what I think.
I think that's very key. I think it's something that we used to do more of. When I get a business on here that's been around for 50, 60 years, and there's some Black owned businesses out here that long, when they go back
Yes,
and tell their story, they talk about how if they didn't have something, they would quickly, not even think about it, calling up another business,
that's right.
sending a customer to this other business.
Hmm. I don't
So
have
it's
it, but such and such have it.
yes, yes, I think
Hmm.
that's really important because I think that is not happening. And like
Mm-mm.
you said,
Not as much.
if I got a floral shop and I'm out of flowers or whatever, this other person,
Hmm.
you got to have some trust and some kind of relationship with
Yeah,
this person, with these people. How do you get that going?
yeah. And I think too, what happens in our community is once we are done wrong, I was asking you this, if we are done wrong by somebody in our community, we don't tell them what they did wrong. We don't stop to say, brother, look, I ordered something from your business and it was subpar. You know, how how can I help you to make it better?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
brother, look, I ordered something from your business. It was subpar. I'm telling you this, because I don't want it to happen to the next person.
Mhm.
Right. I think those are some key things that we can do as business, as professionals, to say, I have provided this service to you, or I have bought this service from you with the expectation that it's going to be, it don't have to be excellent, but it's got to be good, you know, and so that I can keep coming back. Let's say you talked earlier about going to a black owned restaurant. Let's say you went to that restaurant and the food was not good. Would you just stop going, or would you go to that person and say, hey, I really want to give you my feedback because I feel like you are doing good in this community, and I want you to be able to continue to do good, so I'm going to give you this
Mhm.
feedback. Now there may be some people that be like, I know my greens and collard green is good, but there are some people who's going to take it to heart and say,
Mhm.
you know what, sister, you right. Oh, you know what, ma'am, you right. Let me take note of that and let me work on that. But I
How
think those are some,
about create businesses creating, an avenue for people to give feedback? You
yeah,
know,
that too.
give
That
us
too.
feedback on
Yeah,
what we could do
yeah.
better.
And I think a big thing now, because social media is real, the first thing we want to do is that didn't do this. We want to blast somebody on social media instead of really taking it to that person and taking into account that this person is trying and this person is working towards it. Give them some feedback. Whether you would be out here blasting the white folks if they didn't do right, but you want to really try to help your sisters and brothers to excel. But here's the other thing: we got to learn how to take constructive criticism. You know, now that's biblical, right? We
Mhm.
need to go ahead and be able to give you some correction, give you some love, give you some, and give you correction, but in a loving way. Give you
Sure.
criticism, but in a loving way. We want to be able to do that for those people who are black and brown and in our communities.
I wanted to speak, we're getting to the top of the hour, but I wanted to cover the issue of policies. Uh,
Mm, okay.
okay, so we
Uh-oh.
talked about solutions and
Mm-hmm.
policy actually, what it policy actually means in a nonprofit ecosystem. We're setting
Mm-hmm.
rules, we got laws for funding formulas and
Mm-hmm.
eligibility criteria. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
how would you speak to that with the amount of time we have left here?
So are you saying in terms of criteria for getting grants
Yep.
or
Well, this is
policy?
what yep, the policies that are on the table.
Okay.
That-
So I can tell you for I'll talk
Like,
from,
like,
I
like
think I'm gonna try
how
to
these,
talk.
like how these foundations design these grant requirements.
That's a good question. That is a
Mm-hmm.
very good question.
What would that?
There is a need, right? So I think that we always have to put some kind of guidelines and stipulations on what we can accept as organizations that are nonprofits. Nonprofits should also have what kind of things are they going to accept, right? You don't want to just accept anybody money. Let's say you're an organization that um, works with children. Do you want to accept money from an alcoholic beverage company? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what that's a policy you can put into place as a nonprofit for yourself. So I believe that when there are funders who have policies, it's because there are 1.5 million nonprofits in the city of Chicago. There's not that much fun.
Wow,
There's a lot of
1.5
resources.
million in
Yes.
Chicago.
And it's probably grown. That's old number. That's old statistics. So it's probably grown since then. But there are 1.5 million nonprofits in the city of Chicago. So there has to be some kind of level of cap of how they are going to look at the organization when they are looking at funding for that organization. There is now trust-based philanthropy. And when you hear about trust-based philanthropy, it used to be so hard to get grants from an organization. But
Mm-hmm.
nonprofits started speaking up, saying, "Listen, I'm a one person team. I don't have enough people or manpower or bandwidth to be able to report and write a grant. Grant writing was very arduous. It was a long, tedious task. It just people were getting burned out just from writing grants. So what foundations and corporations did was, okay, we're gonna make one pagers, but here are the guidelines we're gonna put on this. Here are the stipulations, and they have loosened that a lot in the last 5 or 10 years. So how are they made? They have to look at who and what is needed in the community and who is what they need to make an impact. And what we need to remember too is that when we are going to a foundation or a corporation to ask them for dollars, we are extending the impact they are making, right? So if you go on to Allstate and you are in good hands with Allstate, and your organization is to support good hands, right? So what they're going to do is try to fund you because you are really an extension of the impact they want to make in the community where you are serving.
Now, I'm gonna ask a question right here. This organization that you're going to get try to get this grant from, they
Mm-hmm.
want to have an impact
Yep.
on the community. And
Yes.
we need to look at and asking for these grants, what kind of impact do they want to
Correct.
have in our community? Because
Correct.
empowerment of our
Yes.
community is an issue.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't mind throwing money
Yeah.
into our communities and
Yeah.
our many of our nonprofits,
And you
but is
talked
it
about
going
that.
to empower our community? So we need to know what they're, we need to
Correct.
be looking at them as much as we're trying to get money.
And what's important, Denise, is that you align your mission aligns with their values. Your values align with their values, right? You don't want to, and that's what we do. It's called chasing the dollars. And you don't want to do
Mhm.
that because a lot of times what happens is we're like, oh, this organization is in love and happiness. Okay, so we're gonna change our mission to love and happiness. No. Does it align with who you are as an organization? Does it align with your values as a human being? Does it align with what the community needs? That's the other thing we need to do. We need to do some research on what the community actually needs. We're starting these nonprofits on because you grew up in a household that didn't have bread, so now you start an organization where kids need bread, and that's not what the community needs. Right. So it's a lot of that that's happening, but you do want to align yourself with the right organization by looking at their guidelines, looking at what they're giving to, looking at how they've already impacted the community. You want to look at that stuff. Now, you ain't too good to say no. Like, ain't no money too good for you to say no. You, as a small
Mhm.
organization, can stand your ground and say no. And if enough of our small organizations are doing that, the larger organizations are doing it for sure.
And
And we can,
I think it's really important for us to look at today, especially when we look at the level of gentrification that is occurring here in Chicago on the south side and the
mm-hmm,
west side. A lot of money coming, a lot of
mm-hmm,
buildings going up, a lot of development
yeah,
is going up.
yeah,
And so what is their goal? What is their mission?
correct.
And
What
if
are
they
you
give
doing
us
in my
dollars,
community?
mhm,
What are you doing in my community?
that's right. Right. And what's
And
your
it's
is your
okay for you to
vision?
ask them that.
Is your vision matching mine?
Is it what we see for the community? Is it what we see for, the people in this community? Is it
Mm-hmm.
what we see for education? Right? Like, I think
Right.
that is huge for us to be
Mhm.
able to, as small nonprofits, to be able to say, what are you doing in my community? And are you aligning with the vision that the community has for itself?
Mhm.
A lot of times it's like, whew, savior, right? It's Captain Save, right? You come in
Mhm.
with this savior complex when we really need something else. So it's just all about alignment. It is, I can't say that enough. Align yourself with a funder, or even if you are an individual, you're not just going to go anywhere that you don't align yourself with.
Mhm.
You may go into places like this just don't feel well. It don't sit well with my soul. And then you walk out. The same for your organization.
Now churches are nonprofit
They
organizations,
are.
right? So how do you see churches in the scheme of this nonprofit
Mhm.
conversation? Because I'm
Yeah.
kind of being open here.
Yeah, so churches
Because
are a
we
little
have,
different.
okay, because you mentioned Inglewood, and I think somebody told me at one point, I don't know if it's true today, it was like 500 churches in Inglewood. And we have so many churches in our community. I often
Mhm.
say the Black community should be Holy Land with all the churches that we have, you know, and they're nonprofit, and the tax thing or whatever they're not paying. How do you see churches in terms of their benefit in this scheme of things for nonprofit?
What's crazy about churches and a nonprofit, if you pay attention to some of the larger churches, they all
Mhm.
have community development organizations. Your church can't apply for a grant, or especially if you're a Baptist church. You're a Baptist church, or you are, you know, most grants won't give it to a church. They will not give to churches, because now I'm telling you that I only support, Catholic churches. So I only support Baptist churches. And now I'm gonna have all the 500 Inglewood Baptist churches applying, and that's not, the company's appeal, or the foundation's appeal, to everybody, right? Like they can have, but your organization has to be able to appeal to everybody. So sometimes you go into a missionary Baptist church and they want you to wear long skirts, white shirts, certain things. Most grant funding or funding organizations won't support that organization, because you are focused on one set specific thing. But what I can tell you, and I think my church can be used as a model, what my pastor did was, he said, whatever you need in this building, he said, is yours for the community. And so
Mhm.
what we do is, the camp is the outreach of the church. So that's how we get a lot of our funding. That's how we get a lot of support, because we are an outreach. So that means that anybody, no matter your background, no matter your religion, no matter your sexual gender, none of that, you can still come and be a part of the things that are happening at the church. We are located in the church building, but we are not a faith-based church. I do have in our pillars that we are people of faith, which means any given time I might say, "Oh, Jesus, let me pray for you." But that does not mean that I'm forcing you to be my religion, right? You
Mhm.
come in as a Catholic, you leave as a Catholic. You come in as a Muslim, you leave as a Muslim. But what we're doing is providing a safe space for you to be, to do, and come. And so that there's a place for you. It is not that I want you to become that. And I think that where we lose a lot of people in churches is that if you're not of this faith, you cannot be a part of this. And most funders are not funding you in that way.
Yeah, I think it's because you got this church, you had this big church building, and everything is in this church. I think if it's going to be community, if you're going to say community,
Mm-hmm.
then whatever development is occurring there is what a community looks like. A community
Correct.
has a church, a community has a
Yep.
grocery store, a
Yep.
community has the cleaners,
Mm-hmm.
all
And we can be a part
different
of that,
types
right?
of
Churches can be a part
businesses.
of that.
Right,
Yeah.
and not just a slew of churches and a slew of nail shops and a slew of
Correct.
restaurants. Because you
Yep.
come in our communities, and it's like people think, well, all we want to do is go to church and get our nails done and get our hair
Mm-hmm.
done and
Mm-hmm.
eat some fast foods.
Mm-hmm.
And you go
Now,
into other communities and you see different kinds of
yeah.
like you'll see a place where you buy supplies for your house. So you got
Mm-hmm.
homeowners around here. So
Mm-hmm.
you have the hardware stores
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. And you got the jewelry stores that's selling
Mm-hmm.
diamonds. Oh,
Yeah.
people get married. Around here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It speaks to what those people are
Yeah.
about. But when you
Yeah.
come in our communities and you look at our businesses,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're a reflection of who we are,
Mm-hmm. I hear
and
you.
representing what we are. And so
Yeah.
those people that are getting dollars, churches,
Yeah.
nonprofits, whatever, and you operate in the best interest of Black
I was
communities,
gonna say, but
this
Denise,
is
you go
what we
back to
need
the
to
very
see.
beginning of this conversation, right? You go back to the sharing of the resources, right? That's something we did, in the 60s. You think about how the Black Panthers worked, you think about how Martin Luther King worked. It was all about the sharing of the resources to be able to build the community to get us to where we are today. We didn't get to where we are today without none of that work being done. So if we don't have the resources, for instance, there are 3 churches within a block's distance from my church, right? From where camp is, there are 3, and I always reach out like, hey, we're
my
here.
question was going to be, do those
Yeah.
churches work together?
Yeah. And we, one church came over to me and he said, I see what you're doing, sister. And we have a community garden. He came and worked in the community garden. I was like, well, tell me what you need, brother, because I'm back over there with you. So that's the thing. We are always in competition with each other instead of sharing those resources that we have. Right. And a lot of it is, it's enough resources. It is so many. I talked about how many nonprofits there are. And what funders see is if we're working collectively, they want to give you more money. And I don't think people realize that. Funders don't want to give to you. They don't want to give to this. Well, we got 25 summer day camps in Inglewood. Okay, well, let me call at least 3 of them and see what we can do to partner. Now, what do you need over there so that I can help you out? Right? Do you need me to bring my kids to your programming? Do you need me to, how do we ride share? What do we do? It was another church in our community that had a food pantry. You know what I did? I sent my kids over there to work in the food pantry. Okay. You know what I'm saying? I use those resources like that. If you got something going on, you need support, where can we help? Right? That's what growth is. That's how we support each other. Because if you go in, and like we talked about, if you go in any other community, that's what they're doing.
All right. I'm going to let you have closing remarks. We have gone past the hour, but that's okay. This is important. If people want to get grants, I want them to be able to contact you because I think you can help set people on the right path in terms of what they should be thinking about. What's going to be required. So I'm going to let them know how to get in touch with you and have your last words.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you for having me, Denise. This was an amazing conversation. I learned a lot from you, ma'am. So it is an absolute pleasure sharing space with you. So, I truly believe that when you invest in Black communities, you are investing in a lifelong change. I think that if you are somebody who has started a nonprofit, you've already been doing the work. I am here to support you in the work that you're already doing, helping you to just further your mission, helping you to grow your dreams and your vision for your community or for that child that you want to help. And the way to reach me right now is through my email address, which is djclairconsulting@gmail.com. Don't worry, that Gmail is coming off pretty soon. I'm working on upgrading and building out my website. But right now, that's the way you can contact me at djclairconsulting@gmail.com. And you can always follow Camp 1302 and register for our free camp programming at www.camp1302.org. And that's Deborah Clair. If you, reach out to Denise, if you need to contact me and you missed all that information, I'm here to support our community and make sure that we have the resources that we need to be able to move forward and to help those who need help the most.
One last question I did not ask.
Yeah.
Cost. When people get grant writers.
Yeah.
What does the cost look like? What should we be expecting? What should we be asking around?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say this. Cost is based on
the structure of it, at least.
Yeah, cost is based on the work that I am doing. So I am a career fundraiser. So I have certain bill of rights that I have to attend to. I am part of a fundraising association that have a donor bill of rights, right? Like we know what the donor intent is for the dollars that they give. Also, if somebody comes to you and tell you, hey, I can write this grant for you, but you just give me a percentage of that grant. It is unethical. It is not, it is not ethical to do that work. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because I'm doing the work already, right? So I am taking hours and hours out of my day to write that grant. So to get paid up front or to get paid hourly, or, if you go to somebody and say, hey, I would like for you to design a website, they're going to say, I want a down payment to do that work. Now, that work for grant writers can be anywhere from very small, $300, to and that's just an estimate, right? And it can go up higher than that. It just depends on the category of grant or what it is I'm doing for that organization. And so I'll have that information available on my website as soon as I get it updated. But it is a range, because you can do a retention, like you can retain somebody like a grant writer or a fundraiser or a consultant to run your fundraising team. You can also have a person to work on if you decide to do an event, you can have somebody work on your events, which is an events planner manager. You can have somebody just write grants for you, which is solely grant writing, right? And that can be $300 a grant, that could be $1,000 a grant, but it is totally up to you what you decide that you need from that grants consultant. So there's a range of costs and a menu of services that a grant writer can provide. But if somebody comes to you and say, I'll write that grant for 10% of that 300,000 grant that you're getting, that is unethical. I have heard that people who are doing government grants are doing that kind of thing. And I'm not sure how ethical or unethical that is, but I know for me as a career fundraiser, what's unethical is for me to tell you that I'll wait to get paid when you get a huge grant. If I tell you I'm gonna write a grant and your grant is $25,000 and I charge you $1,000, that's my pay. That's what I'm getting.
How do you know when you're getting an ethical grant writer? Because there have been situations where people have paid money to get a grant and nothing happened.
Yeah, so I'll tell you up front, like, writing a grant is not guaranteed, right?
Okay.
There's no way a grant writer can guarantee that you're going to get some money, no matter how much. Some people ask for, like, your track record. Denise, I've been doing this for 20. I'm serious. I've been doing it for 20 years, more than 20 years. I have raised so much money in my career. There is no way. I've talked to people and I've said, hey, am I going to get this grant? I've applied several times to grants and I have still not gotten the grant, but I've done the work on it. So if somebody comes and tell you, I can guarantee you don't get this grant, how can you guarantee me you're going to get the grant when the grant landscape is so competitive? Some people are offering 40 grants and over 300 applicants are applying for those grants. So there's no way you can guarantee me unless you know exactly what to put in that grant application. And you really don't know. You're just looking for alignment in the criteria of what that organization is giving dollars for and what you are doing as an organization. So to tell if somebody is ethical is if they are telling you that they can guarantee you that they're going to get the money. Nobody can.
No guarantee. Okay.
There's no guarantee.
Okay. But you can look at the fact that they've been doing this a long time.
I would say look at the fact that they've been doing it a long time and that, they have probably raised a lot of dollars, right? Yeah, look at those things. If they've been doing this a long time and they've been raising a lot of dollars. Yeah, I've raised over $20 million in my career. My first $2 million gift came when I was 10 years into the game. So you know what I'm saying? Like there's work to be done in this area, and people are really getting over on people by telling them they can guarantee money. I just don't think that that's right when you tell people I can guarantee that you're going to get this money unless you know the funder. Unless you know the funder and you know the funder is giving out those dollars.
Is there training? If you
are not somebody who knows.
Is there training? Is there training for this, becoming a grant writer?
Yeah, I went to school for this.
They have classes you can take.
Yeah. And certain nonprofits offer grant writing workshops and classes. I know I do a couple of them too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. I learned a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here. Like I said, if
Okay.
you need me, Denise, I'm here. Always willing to answer some questions. I'll do a 30-minute consultation with anybody who reaches out.
Mhm.
And like I said, I'm here, DJ Clair Consulting at gmail.com right now.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Claire, I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Um, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing in the community. What are your plans for the future?
Oh, that's
Please do.
good. To
Uh-huh.
really build our DJC Connect, and to really continue to build on to Camp 1302. I think my most immediate goals for the future, plans for the future, is to really dig deep into Camp 1302. And I wanted to see Camp 1302 become $1 million operation. You know, I want to see it grow. I want to see it glow up. And also put a lot of time and work into helping other nonprofits to become those major organizations that they want to become.
Okay, wonderful. Well,
And,
thank
see my grandbabies grow up.
another generation.
Another generation.
Another
Yes.
generation. That's right. Absolutely. Well,
Yes.
thank you for coming,
You're so welcome.
family. This has been a very enlightening conversation.
Yeah.
Um, please
Same here.
please contact Claire if you're
Deborah
interested.
Clair.
That's right, Deborah Claire, and getting grant. If you're thinking about getting grants, or even thinking about setting up a nonprofit organization,
Yes. Reach out.
understanding what it is that you're getting into. So yeah, this is real important,
Yeah.
and most important, as we tell you every week, you got to support Black businesses.
Please do.
Absolutely. All right. So have a good night.
You too. Have a good night, everybody.